This is it right here. Paycheck Baits punch skirt, River to Sea trash bomb, River to Sea new jack flipping hook, punch stop by Paycheck Baits, missile baits D-bomb. This is the rig for dropping bombs on them. So we got the rod, 8-foot Daiwa Steez flipping stick, Daiwa Zillion Type R reel, 7:3-to-1 high-speed gear ratio reel, 65-pound Maxima braid, and then you got your bait. That's what you do for dropping bombs on them. Let's go drop some bombs on these fish. You know, pulling up to a mat, it's kind of paying attention to some of the key aspects of this mat. You know, you've got a couple of reed heads in there, you've got some pennywort, you've got some dead hyacinth. You know, for me, when I look at a mat, one of the first things I try to key in on is the thickest part of it, or finding some obstruction. So the obstruction that you would see in this mat are the reed heads, you know. Then you've got a defining line of where the dead hyacinth is and the pennywort starts. So it's a transition area. So those are the places that I like to key in on when I'm punching a mat. You can see that indentation in there, and that's one of the thickest parts of the structure that's right there, but also right next to a reed head, so there's something attached to the bottom that the fish can actually lay up against an ambush bait. So looking for that indentation allows that 1.5 ounce River to Sea weight to go through. And what I'll do is I'll take it, I'll make a couple of hops with it, and then I'll make another pitch, even, you know, 3 feet to the left to another indentation, and let it go down. Make a couple of hops. You know, all over the country, there's definitely different types of mats. You know, there's mats that sit in a foot of water, there's mats that sit in 10 feet, 15, 20 feet of water. You have to pay attention to where you get those bites. You know, one thing that I'm doing is when I'm going down through there and I'm making those pitches through the mat and that bait goes right through and I get bit right away, that tells me that a lot of those fish are sitting right underneath the mat. And so what I'll do is I'll pitch it in there. If I don't get bit right away, I'll let it go to the bottom and hit the bottom, kick up a little mud, but I'll wind it back up to the top of the mat and I'll bang it off the top of the mat. And a lot of times you'll see that mat move when the fish is eating it. And so you definitely have to, that lets you know that the fish are sitting in that higher water column and you want to present your bait there. So pitching it through there, leaving it at the top of the mat, shaking it, hitting the top of the mat is definitely, you know, something to pay attention to, versus when you drop it down through the mat and all your bites come off the bottom, then you let it know to go all the way to the bottom and just kind of hop it on the bottom there. The great part about that River to Sea trash bomb is that it's going to hit the bottom and it's going to kick up a lot of mud or silt, and that's going to trigger fish into striking. Or that River to Sea trash bomb is going to come to the top of the mat, bang up off the top of the mat, look like an injured bait fish, and the fish are just going to terrorize it. And when you get bit, you know, you don't want to drop your rod and have a slack line and set the hook. What I like to do with this rod, the way it was designed, is let the fish pull the rod a little bit. It has a little bit softer, let him pull the rod a bit, but keep that rod roughly in a, you know, between a 230 position, so where you can pull up on that fish and get that hook buried into them. It's not a slack hook set where you crack them really hard. It's a lean hook set straight up to where that weight and that hook come together, and then you get that cavitation like I showed you earlier. And when you do that, you don't pop that fish's mouth open, you pull that weight through that fish's mouth. That hook being bent up that way is gonna bury it in the roof of the mouth, and when you got him hooked through the roof of the mouth or through the eye, all you gotta do is wind him in. There's times where you might need to go up there and get that fish, you know. You don't have to try to rip them out of that cover. Once they're hooked, you got 65-pound braid, you can just hold that fish, and you don't want to try to pull him through. You hold him, get him to the top, peg him, he'll either flop around and pop out of the mat, or you go in there and you get him. Because you got to remember, you got 65-pound braid, you got an 8-foot Steez flipping stick, and you're pulling on this fish. And something's got to give. You know, that new jack flipping hook's not going to bend. So between the hook not bending, the line not breaking, and the rod being as stout as it is, something's got to give, and it's going to be that fish's mouth if you pull too hard. So don't try to rip those big fish out of heavy cover. Pin them to the top. They'll either pop through themselves, flop around and come through that grass, or you just go in there and you land those fish. So you made that pitch into the mat. You know, one thing that I like to do when I'm dropping bombs on them is I still try to be a little bit stealthy. And so when I pull that bait up through the mat, you know, this 7-3-1 Zillion Type R reel allows me to wind that line up. So when I come to the end of that mat up out of that hole, I'm actually winding it and not letting that bait hit the water again. Because when you get that mat, as you pitch it through it, it makes that splash. Well, that spooks the fish. So anytime I make a pitch into a mat, I try to let it go down in the hole, I wind it back up, and once I get it to the top, I kind of make a little hop and wind up that reel, or wind up that line really fast, and that's where the Zillion Type R 7-3-1 excels. You know, something that I once heard that I firmly believe is true is, you know, not letting your feet get up off the ground when you go to set the hook. You want to keep your feet planted and pull on that hook set. You know, you want to pull hard on that hook set and arch your back and pull back on that. What it is you're eliminating the slack out of the line, at the same time applying a lot of pressure to hooking that fish. You know, that hook set applies when I'm punching mats, and I seem to lose less fish that way. And you know, D. Thomas was one of the ones, and it's kind of like, you know, certain people tell you something. As many tournaments as that guy's won over the years, it's something that you obviously want to listen to. It's like Denny Brower telling me about the softer rods. Those are the things that I listen to and pay attention to, because when they make sense and you apply them, then it works.